Duke Nukem is interesting. Not so much the character himself, he's a straightforward doofus, but the existing love around the character. From an outside perspective, what's the big deal, right? It's not like Duke, which not only popularized the genre in the first place, but has seen a resurgence in what are two of the best FPS games we've gotten in the modern era. With Duke Nukem, there's like 4 games, if you're not counting the spin-offs, 2 of which are old DOS games that came out just after the Big Bang, 1 game that's considered great, and the other that's considered one of the most disappointing sequels to ever exist.
What about the game, Duke? Was it any good?
Yeah, but after 12 years, it should be.
Oh, that quote didn't age well. I mean, I've never seen a fan base so upset about a disappointing sequel. Well, that was until The Last of Us 2 came and violently grabbed that title off of Duke Nukem Forever. Just like, give me that, bitch. I'm now the most hated sequel of all time. Honestly, I didn't even know Duke Nukem was a thing until Duke Nukem Forever. You know, the one that we got, not the unfinished build. I decided I wanted to play Duke Nukem 3D, see what the buzz was about. Maybe learn for myself why people love this meathead of a character. There has to be something special about that one game that was really good for this to happen. And after extensive research, I decided I was willing to sell $3 of my soul to good old Randy, which in retrospect I should have just should have bought a coffee. And then flushed that coffee down the toilet, because I don't even drink coffee, I don't like it. It's just a better use of my money than giving it to this fine-skinned magician. But fuck it, in all honesty, I kind of bought it a while ago, and wasn't thinking about that at the time. I didn't even see if I got the best version of the game. That's how little thought I put into this purchase. I like shooters. Plus, Duke is a notable part of gaming history, and I wanted to experience that. Plus, I already sold way more than $3 of my soul for the Borderlands series, so, like, what's another $3? Plus, now we got rumors of a Duke Nukem movie being made. So, I guess there's literally no better time for me to jump in with my 2 cents on this classic. Now that I get the gist. It's not for me, but I get it. I enjoyed Duke Nukem 3D for what it was during the time I was playing it, and I'm glad I played it. It's a damn good game, not just for its time, but in general, but it's probably one I'll never revisit after this. The thing is that I didn't grow up playing boomer shooters like this. Like, the first shooter I ever played, like, really played, was GoldenEye on the N64, like a lot of other people. I did play a little bit of Quake as a kid, because I remember that being on our computer, but I wasn't good at it. I didn't get past the first level. I was a little kid. I sucked. All this to say that coming into this genre of shooter, having not grown up with it, it can be rough around the edges. This game was very conflicting in the same way that a game like Metal Gear Solid 1 and Resident Evil 3 are conflicting for me. Both games I didn't grow up like strictly playing and went back years later to experience. It's a game both ahead of its time and stuck firmly within it, if that makes sense. Like, it feels so advanced, but also so archaic. I say these things in the nicest way too. Like, these type of games are milestones. They push game design forward, and being able to experience them firsthand is always a treat in some way or another. But now I'm just going around in circles. Duke Nukem, the character, needs no intro. Most people know who he is and what he's about. Duke is a simple guy. He shoots aliens, says one-liners,
Die, you son of a bitch,
and respects women. He respects women so much that he tips the strippers extra because sex work is real work, and Duke is a God-loving American who fights for freedom. There's your intro. He didn't need one, but I did it anyways because I don't know how to segue into talking about the gameplay. So here's the experience I had with Duke Nukem 3D. It was 50% admiring what a game of this time could do, and 40% being reminded why boomer shooters aren't exactly my favorite genre of shooter. Also 10% laughing at the game while shaking my head in shame. The amount of interactivity in these levels is what I expect from an indie game aping the aesthetics of a boomer shooter. Granted, my only real experience before this is Doom 1 and 2, but it was genuinely impressive to see how advanced this was for its time. There's environmental destruction, bigger environmental destruction, looking in mirrors, piss. And of course, generously tipping America's courageous strippers because sex work is real work. You thought that was a bit earlier? No, I'm serious. I'm dead serious. I thought the weapon lineup was enjoyable. There's a good balance between real weapons you'd expect and more fun inventive stuff like the shrink gun, freeze gun, and the devastators. Even if I killed myself like a million times with those things. Yeah, I'm not good at these games. If I wasn't dying, I was getting absolutely lost because some key item I picked up and forgot about. Is there a way to check the key cards you've picked up in this game? Because I couldn't find any. I'm not saying it's not in the game, I just couldn't find it. With that said, getting lost every 5 seconds may be frustrating, but I've played enough Call of Duty campaigns to know what the opposite end of that design looks like. Not to say these games are alike, just illustrating that I'd rather a game that doesn't hold my hand, even if it leads to frustrating gameplay. The way you move throughout these levels is pretty interesting. Like, it is the classic keyed card hunting you'd expect from this era, but it's also not always that straightforward. Sometimes you gotta go through a vent, or cause an explosion, or like some weird jump. Sometimes it's swimming, which did throw me off because I did not expect swimming mechanics in a game with this fucking archaic technology. And I mean, it's not just that they're swimming controls, they're fluid swimming controls. Either way, the levels feel very Half-Life at times, but again, not fully, because there's still the key card hunting, and it's necessary. It's one of the aspects of the game that makes it feel both ahead of the curve, but also a product of its time. And I almost wish the key card hunting was replaced completely with more organic exploration and progression through the levels, because that stuff's interesting to me. And honestly, one of the highlights of this game for me was the levels. How detailed they were, how they explode and change in front of me, the ways you can move about them. And that's not including the jetpack, which allows you to explore some of these levels completely differently from if you were just like going on foot. Quite a bit of it involved out-of-the-box thinking. More out-of-the-box thinking than I was ever expecting from a character like Duke Nukem. It was a good time. When the combat was clicking, it felt good. And I enjoyed the sense of exploration. Also, the goddamn soundtrack in this game is just bop after bop after bop after bop after fucking bop. Like, every song goes hard. If nothing else, the soundtrack alone made this game worth it. Really, most of the things I didn't like mostly come down to things that just remind me I'm playing a relic. Only thing I truly hated was all of episode 2. All the levels in that episode are so closed in and claustrophobic at a time when the game introduces exploding drones. And like, they soak up a lot of damage too. This type of combat works in open spaces, mostly. Like, jumping to a closed-in space every now and then is nice, but whole levels based in these closed-in spaces is absolutely dreadful. Also, this game is just filled with so many beginner's traps, so many moments that unless you know ahead of time what you're getting into, you are going to get jumped. Now sure, some of these could have definitely been mitigated if I was a better player, but there are ones where like, I open a door and then there's just a shit ton of enemies just standing right there on the other side waiting to blast me. There's one in particular that like gives you no room to fight or maneuver around them. You can't even like lead them out of the room because the way out involves swimming through an underwater passage which enemies can't travel through. Guess the only thing left to talk about is Duke Nukem the character himself and what comes along with him, which is essentially an overdose of tough guy machismo. He is a hyperized version of the stereotypical action hero. There is a sense of parody to Duke Nukem, but I wouldn't say he necessarily is a parody. I don't get the feeling, at least, that in this game, Duke's personality is being played up for laughs. Minus one scene where he rips off an alien's head and shits down his neck. Which, I won't lie, pretty damn funny. But in general, I don't get the idea that Duke is the way he is to poke fun at the stereotype itself, but to be seen as cool. Now keep in mind, this was a whole different era. It's hard to give a game shit that is almost as old as I am for this type of hyper-masculinity, which was pretty popular back then. And is almost so juvenile that it's not worth getting mad at. Oh no, the game has pixeled titties. You can tip the stripper. Sound the alarms. Although some of the alien shit is kind of fucking weird and honestly surprises me that they were able to get away with it at that time. Like, I'm not sure if like the original release of this game didn't have all of this in it. Also, what the hell is with the random geisha who just flashes you her boobs? Like, why? Who sat there and thought, you know what would really tie this room together? A random geisha lady showing you her tits. Again, it's just kind of juvenile. It's not like it's dumb, but I don't know if it's worth getting mad at. I guess one of the main things that stops me from really being like offended by any of this is that you can just turn it off. Like, if you don't like it, you can just turn off all this, like, stuff and just play the game. And honestly, I probably would have turned on that option if it wasn't for the fact that I wanted the Duke Nukem experience. It does make showing footage a whole lot harder, though. But I guess, like, final conclusion is that Duke Nukem is a fine game held back by a character who is a product of his time. I can see the reason why this game was so successful when it released, but also there's a really good reason why this character is carried on through memes and memories as opposed to new entries, because I honestly, I don't know how you do a Duke Nukem game in 2022 or beyond. Please, no middle grounds. Well, you might be sitting there and wondering, what do you even mean by that? Well, for starters, let me tell you what I don't mean. I don't mean not having a mix of action and